Hello, everyone. A very logical day to all of you. So, here we are with the discussion of the first editorial of the Indian Express of January 16th. So, let's see what we have in store today. So, the first part will be the reading, second part will be coming to the central idea, and third will be the discussion of the words. Right? Come on. Here we go. So, the Voice of the Global South Summit that Delhi convened last week did not produce any spectacular outcomes. It was not supposed to. The forum, however, marks an important effort by India to make global governance work for the developing nations whose concerns tend to get a short shrift in international forums. Now, reading these two sentences, we get to know one thing. One, we are talking about this Global South Summit. It was convened last week, this is understood, but it did not produce, becomes the important point here. It did not produce any spectacular outcomes. बहुत ही बढ़िया कुछ outcome हो ऐसा नहीं था, but here it comes with the word however. So a little twist, as I always say, however gives you a little twist in the idea, right? So it marks an important effort for India to make global governance work for the developing nation. That means this is going to work for the developing nations whose concerns tend to get a short shrift in international forums. The virtual forum has provided valuable inputs from the global south that could facilitate India's ambition to steer the G20 summit in Delhi to success later this year. So this was a global south summit. Now it is going to have a global, the G20 summit. So this was a practice match, and the G20 summit would be the actual match, right? So if it is doing good in the global south, which is helping the other countries, the developing countries, it indicates that India's ambition to steer the G20 summit in Delhi would be a success later on. Now, the forum is also about India reconnecting with a global group of nations that had fallen off the Indian foreign policy radar since the end of the Cold War. So, India reconnecting with those nations. तो अभी तक दो बातें आई हैं सामने, दो positives आए हैं, दो अब इंग्लिश वाला दो, right? Though the summit did not produce any spectacular outcomes, here comes the positives. One, it is good for the developing nations. Second, it is indicating India's ambition, or it is rather facilitating India's ambition to steer the G20 summit, right? These are the two positive things, indicators. And then India reconnecting with all those countries. Now, over the last 3 decades, this is just an explanation of what India was doing after the Cold War. It did not connect, और तभी वो reconnecting वाला point आ गया है. ठीक है, bringing stability to the neighborhood and developing regional institutions in the extended neighborhood. That 120 odd nations attended the meeting underlines the willingness across the global south to support Indian leadership on addressing the global challenges that have had a massive impact on the condition of the many developing countries. The twin crises produced by the COVID-19 and the Russian war have had a devastating and disproportionate impact on the global south. That means the global south countries have been affected by all these things. What India did in this, or including 120 countries, or the 120 countries attending this summit, indicates that yes, these countries want India to steer them towards development, right? These are the developing countries. So that means they are actually seeing India as a leader in these global matters. So this is what the author is pointing out, that these are the positives from the Global South Summit meeting, right? Now let's go to the second paragraph. While the future of this particular forum is not clear, the idea that India must reclaim the leadership of the developing world appears to have gained much currency in Delhi. Now, see, the same idea has been continued here in the second paragraph, that we do not know what this the South Summit would be, the Global South Summit. What is the future, right? But at least this is clear that India must reclaim the leadership of the developing world. This idea is good. Although the government might be aware of the dangers of one's reach exceeding its grasp, once reach exceeding its grasp मतलब जितना अपने पकड़ में आ सकता है उसे कहीं आगे जा रहे हैं हम. The foreign policy discourse in Delhi is drifting towards exuberance about India's plans to reorient the G20 and take charge of the global south. Exuberance, you can understand from this, drifting towards enthusiasm, energy, because here it said it gained much currency, the same would be indicated with the word exuberance also. And taking charge से भी हम समझ सकते हैं कि एक positive related word है. So it's okay. The international context today is not amenable to the major global initiatives. Multilateralism is now in dire straits thanks to the growing military tensions among the great powers between Russia and China on one side and US, Europe, and Japan on the other. Major power conflict has been reinforced by the breakdown of the world trading rules and the weaponization of global finance. Now, the second part of this passage is editorial is actually telling you about here the building optimism, the idea that India can actually be a global leader here for the developing nations, that is positive. And then this is a word of caution giving you what is the actual situation, the international context. ठीक है, यहाँ पर वो dire states, not amenable, military tensions, right? And conflict has been reinforced. So there are four words here showing the negative context here, or rather the problems here. Not negative context, it can be the problems or the challenges that India will face when it is aiming to become a global leader in this manner to mitigate the challenges, right? So, this part, the first part of the paragraph gives you that yes, there is this thought is gaining currency means positive है, ठीक है, India ऐसा कर सकती है. Second part of the same paragraph is giving you that see these will be the obstructions or the hindrances or the challenges that India is going to face on its path to become a global leader, right, for the developing nations. So you can break this paragraph and understand these 2 points. Third paragraph. Now, India's own past experience with the non-aligned movement and the Group 77 developing nations points to the real difficulty of uniting the global south in pursuit of common goals. Yes, the third paragraph is again emphasizing that yes, there's a lot of difficulty, lot many problems on India's path if India is pursuing this common goal through the global south. Representing the presumed collective interests of the global south has become harder today given the deep economic differentiation and sharp political divisions among the developing nations. Again, an explanation of the same thing that yes, India is going to face a lot of problem here. Why? Because this is becoming harder today. The collective interest, मतलब सारे countries का एक ही अगर interest हो या एक ही intention हो, that is what is best for them. This is just something that can be assumed. It may not be the same or real, right? The ground reality might be very different. So this is harder today because of the economic differentiation and sharp political divisions. Skeptics at home would remind Delhi of India's own enduring developmental challenges. Despite its impressive aggregate GDP and growing economic, industrial, and technological capabilities, skeptics at home ka matlab those people who do not believe that yes, India can aim at or it can have an ambition of leading the developing countries of this global south. What they say is that India itself is facing so many challenges, enduring and tolerate करना इतना कुछ तो India झेल रही है. So, given the size of its population, critics would insist that lifting India towards greater prosperity and sustainable development would automatically improve the condition of the global south. मतलब इंडिया अपना ध्यान रखेगी तो ऑटोमेटिकली ग्लोबल साउथ जो है वो भी आगे बढ़ जाएगा, सही हो जाएगा, it would be prosperous, it would flourish. But then this is given by the skeptics and this is given by the critics. They would say this, but not the author. Author says, yet a large nation and rising power like India can't simply be self-centered. अब देखो यहाँ से पता चल जाता है हमें रीडिंग के साथ साथ कि कौन सा ओपिनियन किसी और का है given by the author, what is given or what is said by other people or the reference given by the author, that is different, and then what the author himself suggests or himself says. That is what we need to filter out. So here when he gives what skeptics at home would say, what critics would insist, fine. Yet karke, he comes up with a different idea. He says that see, a large nation and rising power like India can't simply be self-centered, nor should it abandon its long-standing equities in the global south. Delhi certainly needs to contribute in more significant ways to modernizing and democratizing the global order. ये इतना काम तो दिल्ली को करना पड़ेगा. What Delhi needs, लेकिन अब कैसे करे? तो किस चीज का ध्यान रखना है? यहाँ पर ऑथर ने अपना सजेशन दिया, अपना पॉइंट, right? If you can understand, we have broken the passage into point, reason, example. This becomes the last point. What Delhi needs is a careful balance between nationalism and internationalism, a practical sense of what is feasible in today's world, feasible, possible, viable, and a well defined, crafted hierarchy of Indian priorities on the global stage. ठीक है, hierarchy हम ऐसे कर सकते हैं ना, vertical line होता है मैनेजमेंट का, ये hierarchy होता है. ठीक है, तो इस हिसाब से इंडिया को अपनी लिस्ट ऑफ प्रायोरिटीज बनानी पड़ेगी. इसका मतलब इंडिया डेवलपिंग नेशंस ऑफ द ग्लोबल साउथ के लिए भी काम कर सकती है और अपना काम भी कर सकती है बिकॉज ऑफ दैट प्रॉस्पेरिटी एंड development that is required. So if India becomes prosperous and well developed, the global south will automatically become so, definitely, but India has to work in that direction. So India should maintain a balance between nationalism and internationalism. Right? I hope now this was a passage well filtered. If you are able to do this much, that's very good. Now let us come to the see. We did not get stuck on any difficult word. राइट right? कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ा क्योंकि हम ऑथर का दिमाग समझ रहे थे कि आखिर ऑथर ने कहा क्या है. ठीक है, चलो we'll come up with the main ideas now. If you remember, first, the Global South Summit did not produce the desired outcome. हमने कहा था first paragraph में था ये, but it indicated the willingness of the attending countries to support India in its leadership in the global matters, right? To mitigate the challenges in the global matters. Why? Because the author has said that see 120 countries attending this Global South Summit, which actually did not give a very spectacular outcome, but then it indicated many things. And what it indicated is that these people, these countries, because they are attending the Global South Summit, mean they want India or they would like India to be the leader in these mitigating the challenges of this region. Right? Second, now India must reclaim the leadership of the developing world foreign policy discourse in India. In Delhi is drifting towards exuberance about India's plans to reorient the G20 and take charge of the global south. ये सब था second paragraph में. If you can see, I had marked that also here. Right? It must reclaim the leadership of the developing world, and the foreign policy discourse in Delhi is drifting towards exuberance. That means the optimism. And the third paragraph says the past points to the real difficulty of uniting the countries. Third paragraph हमने ब्रेक किया था कि ठीक है, पास में इंडिया ने देखा है डिफिकल्टी एंड्योर की है, झेली भी है, टॉलरेट की है, but then India cannot be self-centered, the point of view given by the author. It needs to contribute in more significant ways to modernizing and democratizing the global order. This was given in the third paragraph. Now, summing this all together, you get the point. Delhi needs a balance between nationalism and internationalism, a defined hierarchy of global priorities to further its leadership role. And this was the subheading that was given in the editorial. ठीक है, एक टाइटल के बाद का जो सब हेडिंग जैसे आता है, जो पॉइंट आता है, that was it. And you can see I did not give this to you earlier, right? You can see how we came to the same point through the discussion of the 3 paragraphs. Right, now let us see the questions, the words. So we'll be dealing with the vocabulary, and you need to come up with a little more focus on the vocabulary because there's something like a quiz going to happen soon, right? So I'll give you the details in a few days, but then keep revising this. And of course, there would be a reward too. So let's see. Convened is called a meeting, organize, congregate, assemble, convention होता है ना. इन्वेस्टर्स मीट होता है, ठीक है, साइंटिस्ट का कन्वेंशन होता है, बिशप्स का कॉन्ग्रीगेशन होता है. सो इट इज द असेंबली, इट इज द मीटिंग. एंड हियर इफ आई गिव यू समथिंग एक्स्ट्रा, I'll say that Greg means group. Right? Greg as a root word would mean group, and you have the word congregate, you have the word aggregate, you have the word gregarious. So gregarious is a person who is, or not necessarily a person also, it can be an animal also. So the usual sentence that I give is that elephant is a gregarious animal. वो हमेशा झुंड में रहता है, अकेला नहीं चलता है. लायन ग्रेगेरियस नहीं हो सकता, लायन अकेला वार करता है, और एलिफेंट झुंड में चलता है. तो जो झुंड में चलते हैं, जो सोशल रहते हैं, दे आर कॉल्ड ग्रेगेरियस पीपल, राइट? सो अ कन्वेंशन वाज कॉल्ड ऐसा. Spectacular, we read in the first line, no, that there was no spectacular outcome. So splendid, remarkable, great. Spectacular view is how it is used, right? I'm giving you something extra so you can note it down. If you know it, that's very good. It would be that you can recall the meaning of that word. Possible. Shrift. Now, shrift ऐसे लगते हैं जैसे shift हो गया. ठीक है, तो शिफ्ट का मतलब होता है आगे से फटाफट निकल जाना, वो शिफ्ट हो जाएंगे, थोड़ा सा खसक जाना. तो शिफ्ट ऐसा होता है कि दे डू नॉट गिव मच अटेंशन टू द प्रॉब्लम, ज्यादा ध्यान उन पे नहीं दे सकते. तो शिफ्ट कहाँ पे यूज हुआ था? जहां पे जो डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज हैं, जो इतनी कंट्रीज आई थी, उनका लीडर बनना इंडिया के लिए सही होगा. क्यों? क्योंकि उन डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज की जो प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, उन्हें कोई सुनने वाला नहीं है, उन पे कोई ज्यादा लोग ध्यान नहीं देते हैं. सो देयर इज अ शॉर्ट श्रिफ्ट. दिस इज द शॉर्ट श्रिफ्ट इज यूज्ड in the this editorial. So that is not getting much time or attention to the problem. Right? So the problem of the developing countries are not paid much attention. That is the short shrift that they get. I hope you have understood this. Steer, of course, steering wheel होता है, हम गाड़ी चलाते हैं, तो steer का मतलब होता है navigate करना, control करना. To steer, the phrase that is used, you know how it is used. To steer clear of questions. See, the celebrities, when they travel, they come up with some scarf or something. There are many people, many such celebrities, जो अपना actual face पूरा cover करके और फिर चलते हैं, to steer clear of questions by the media. ठीक है, तो बच निकलना उन्हें आता है, या क्वेश्चन से बचने के लिए वो अपना पूरा फेस कवर कर देते हैं, वट एवर दे डू. That way also the word steer is used. Crisis, emergency, catastrophe, calamity, this is something that you know. But I would like to remind you of one extra thing here also. CRISIS is a crisis that is in singular, whereas CRISES is a crisis that is plural. Right? So I hope you get something extra here. With same thing goes with analysis and analysis, with an I and with an E. ठीक है, तो ये सिंगुलर प्लूरल है, छोटी सी बात है, लेकिन यहाँ पे ट्विन क्राइसिस था. अगर तुम पैराग्राफ को फिर से पढ़ते हो तो ट्विन क्राइसिस था. ट्विन क्राइसिस किस किस का था? कोविड-19 का और रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर का. सो वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट अ प्लूरल क्राइसिस, सो इट कम्स विथ ई. एक्सुबरेंस, ऑफ कोर्स यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड. ठीक है, एक ई एक्स होता है एक्सट्रीम के लिए, एक्सुबरेंस इज चीयरफुलनेस, एंथुसियाज्म, एनर्जेटिक, बीइंग फुल ऑफ एनर्जी. इन डायर स्ट्रेट्स, टेरेबल, एबॉमिनेबल, एक्सट्रीमली बैड. ये होता है डायर का मीनिंग, एक्सट्रीमली बैड, टेरेबल. अब the word dire can be used in such a manner. Dire consequences, that means terrible consequences. Dire outcomes means the same thing. Dire situations, right? So such situations where we are facing a lot many challenges becomes a dire situation, an unfavorable situation, adverse situation, कुछ भी कर लो. So dire straits मतलब problem में आ गए. अब the point for you, or maybe a small homework for you. I'm not going to ask you the homework, but I'll give you a small tip. This trait is a geographical feature, right? I'll tell you what it is. It is a narrow bit of water joining two bigger bodies of water, right? यहाँ पे सी होगा या ओशन होगा या कुछ भी होगा, और इसका सबसे सिंपल वाला है पॉक स्ट्रेट. इसका नाम तुमने सुना होगा या इंडिया के पास इसे देखा होगा, मतलब एटलस में. ठीक है. नाउ योर टास्क इज, आई हैव आस्क्ड द जीके गाइस, राइट? Sir said yes, there are a few very important states. So your task is to get to know at least 3 to 4 important states that are there in the whole world. ठीक है, जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट होंगे और क्यों इंपॉर्टेंट है उसमें थोड़ा थोड़ा सा पढ़ लेना. राइट. सो ये इन डायर स्ट्रेट्स तो इज एन इडियम लाइक दिस, अ फ्रेज. नाउ प्रिज्यूम्ड, assumed, taken for granted. This is a simple word, but I've still written it. Skeptics, of course, you know, so they are the disbelievers, they are the questioning people, right? They doubt. तो हमने कहाँ यूज किया था skeptics? Skeptics बोलेंगे इंडिया पहले अपना काम कर ले, अपनी तरक्की कर ले, उसके बाद डेवलपिंग नेशंस की बात करना, है ना? या skeptics ने बोला था कि देखो, will India be able to do it? Why? Because of the problems there, right? In the last paragraph it was given. Enduring is to withstand, to tolerate. Another simple word is to bear. झेलना. Feasible, of course, we know. Practical, possible, viable. Next is crafted. Handicraft hota hai na? So in that way, something that is created, something that is constructed or shaped, and it was crafted. We had written it, or rather discussed it in the last line, that India has to craft this. तो उसे craft क्या करनी है? उसे अपनी list या hierarchy of प्रायोरिटीज को क्राफ्ट करना है, बनाना है, और फिर देखना है कि कैसे प्रॉपर बैलेंस रहता है नेशनलिज्म में और इंटरनेशनलिज्म में. इंडिया का वट एवर रोल दैट इंडिया इज प्लेइंग in its own country, what the government has to do, and what India can do in its ambition, in its idea of coming up as a global leader for the developing nations. Right? I hope you have understood this. I hope this is helpful to you. And that's all for today. So thank you, and we'll meet tomorrow.